Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Call to order this meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, May the 16th, 2024. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located on the Tecumseh-Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumseh-Secwepemc and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. Chair's announcements. We welcome back a familiar face. I was going to say an old face, and then Renee looked at me. A familiar face and a very welcome one. Alternate Director Renee Elliott, who is here today for Director Grenier. We have attending via Zoom Directors Graham, Sow, and Rain. Oh. You're not on, you're on my list. You have to leave. Oh, all right. We have Directors Sow and Rain online. And just a reminder to the gentleman online that when it comes to the vote, we do have to hear you verbally, not just a thumbs up. May 12th to 18th is Local Government Awareness Week, which is meant to raise awareness of roles and services of local government. When people ask us, what does the TNRD do? The answer is generally solid waste and recycling, libraries, fire protection, water, sewer, community parks, mosquito control, invasive plant management, planning and building services, the Film Commission, Fire Smart, emergency preparedness, street lighting, community halls, cemeteries. That's many of our services in one big run-on sentence. Regional district services vary greatly between communities, and property owners in the TNRD only pay for the services which they receive. The TNRD has more than 65 rural communities within its 10 electoral areas, as well as 11 member municipalities and 25 First Nations. So our services play a role in some way for essentially all of the residents in our region. Thompson-Nicola Regional Library is pleased to announce it will be launching a survey in June in order to solicit feedback from residents about the Aberdeen Tiny Library pilot project. The information received will help in the evaluation and planning for future library services. The survey will be accessible online via the TNRL's website or in person at local libraries. Participants will be entered to win a $50 Aberdeen Mall gift card. On a personal note, I was very happy to see a spotting of the mobile library in the wild in Spence's Bridge a couple of weeks ago when I was coming back from Lytton, and pulled over, and they had just arrived. So I was able to get a tour of the mobile library and talk about the services it provides. And I was halfway back to Ashcroft before I thought I should have got a picture. So if you see it in the wild, then please take a snapshot of our beautiful mobile library. Blackpool Fire Rescue deployment on May 11th. 3 members of Blackpool Fire Rescue departed for Fort Nelson to assist with firefighting efforts in response to the Parker Lake wildfire. These members are John Wakefield, Jordan Jansen, and Mark Simpson. From the TNRD, we appreciate your service. We know this is an extremely challenging time for people in Northeast BC, and we ask these people, firefighters and residents, to please stay safe. The 3 firefighters from Blackpool are using the Wildland Type 5 bush truck that was just put into service last week. Also in Blackpool, the TNRD would like to send condolences to a family affected by a tragic house fire there on May the 8th. 1 person died, 1 person was hospitalized as a result of this very intense house fire. Our thoughts are also with responding firefighters as well from Blackpool Fire Rescue. We thank them and all our firefighters for their bravery and leadership in their communities. We have some upcoming community meetings. On Thursday, May 23rd at 6:30 p.m. The TNRD is hosting a meeting for Black Pines Community Water System customers at the Whispering Pines Community Hall. TNRD staff will be there to discuss the completed groundwater source project, as well as the parcel tax requisition for this project and commutation options for residents. On Thursday, May 30th at 6:30 p.m., the TNRD is hosting an online community meeting for residents within the Loon Lake Fire Department Fire Protection Service area, sorry. TNRD staff will discuss the completed Loon Lake Fire Hall, more on that in a minute, as well as the parcel tax requisition for this project and commutation options for residents. On Wednesday, July 5th at 6:30, the TNRD is hosting a meeting for Paul Lake Waterworks System customers at the Harper Mountain Lodge regarding a waterworks feasibility study that was recently completed. And please save the date. Saturday, June 8th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come meet the Loon Lake Fire Department and tour the recently completed fire hall during an upcoming open house. June 8th is 7 years less 1 month from the Elephant Hill wildfire in 2017 that destroyed the Loon Lake Fire Hall. A lot of people have worked very, very hard over the last 7 years to bring this fire hall to completion. A lot of generous donations from community members, from organizations. Recently, the city of Port Moody, thank you, and it was a port. City of Port Moody donated a fire truck to the village of Lytton and a fire engine to the Loon Lake Fire Department. It was surplus to their requirements and they wanted to see them go to good homes. Watering restrictions. Seasonal watering restrictions are in effect for all TNRD community water systems each year. These are set by the TNRD's water conservation plan and apply to the use of treated drinking water. From May 1st to September 15th, even numbered properties can water on even numbered days. Odd numbered properties can, oddly, water on odd numbered days. No watering between 11 a.m. 6 p.m. daily. If any of the directors are asked questions regarding watering restrictions, please encourage them to visit our watering restrictions webpage. We have a number of upcoming meetings and events. On Wednesday, June 19th at 9 a.m. There's a Finance Committee meeting. Wednesday, June 19th at 1:30, Utility Systems Committee meeting. Thursday, June 20th at 10 a.m., Hospital District Board meeting, followed by a regular board meeting at 1:30. And the Committee of the Whole meeting that was scheduled for Friday, June 21st will not be held on that date. Stay in your blue folders. You have a letter from Emergency Management Minister Bowen Ma, 2024 SILGA resolutions, regular mail, and an updated staff contact card. All right, are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda? No. We move on to the minutes of the regular board meeting that was held on April the 18th. So moved. Okay, Director Stamer, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. No one opposed. That is carried. We have a delegation from Fisheries and Oceans Canada. They will be joining us via Zoom. So please give a welcome to representatives from Fisheries and Oceans. Take it away.
Thank you. That was a very efficient start to your meeting, so appreciate being first on the agenda here. I will just share my screen and get my presentation ready for you. Let me know when you can see that. Is that showing up for everyone? Okay, great. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for having us at your monthly Thompson-Nicola Regional District Board meeting. My name is Chantal Karen, and I'm the acting manager for a program in DFO's Fish and Fish Habitat Protection Program called the Integrated Planning for Salmon Ecosystems, or IPSE, as you'll probably hear me say. I'm joining you from my home office today on the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, and I'm regularly based out of DFO's Vancouver offices, but do want to acknowledge that we work in partnership with the nations of the Thompson and Nicola regions in the unceded territory of the Secwepemc, Nklakatma, and Syilx people. And that also means that our geography, the places that we're working, also closely aligns or has some shared footprint with the TNRD as well, hence our interest in updating you on our work today. So today I'm hoping to provide a brief background on salmon in the Thompson-Nicola area, as the impetus for our work that we're doing, and more specifically describe the focus of integrated planning for salmon ecosystems and the two processes that we're working on here in BC that do overlap that footprint of the TNRD. Finally, I'll highlight some of the goals and benefits of this work and opportunities for TNRD staff to get involved. So with that, to get us started, as many of you may know or may be aware, salmon are really a keystone species in the Pacific Northwest. And not only are they very vital to the health of ecosystems, they're also really vital to cultural continuity, local communities, and economies as well. Here you can see a really detailed breakdown, but I don't want you to look at all of the details here, of Chinook, sockeye, coho, and pink salmon, as well as steelhead trout populations that have habitat in each of the major watersheds of the Thompson-Nicola. And the key takeaway I want you to take from this is really the amount of yellow, orange, and red there is on this table, which represents populations that are considered at risk. So 12 of the 18 populations of salmon in the Thompson-Nicola are considered at risk by the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada, and their populations are continuing to decline as well. There are numerous complex pressures facing salmon habitats in the Thompson-Nicola region and the Pacific region as a whole, from extreme climate-related events to anthropogenic and natural pressures, which really cumulatively impact watersheds and the salmon that rely on them. And this is such a complex issue with no single government or organization holding really all of those levers that could support salmon habitat management to uphold and stabilize these populations. At the same time, there's a lot of great work being done by so many actors to understand these pressures as well as undertake habitat restoration. But the work is often uncoordinated and not always kind of working towards a cohesive vision. So with all of that in mind, we feel that collaborative planning that can get us all working towards the same goal is really required at this time to improve salmon ecosystem health and resiliency. All right. And this is really the impetus for integrated planning for salmon ecosystems, which is our program. So just getting into the specifics of that, IPSC is one of many initiatives under kind of an umbrella initiative that is within DFO called the Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative. This was launched in 2021 as a 5-year program aiming to stem declines of Pacific salmon and rebuild these species to sustainable levels for future generations. So our mandate in IPSC is to pilot collaborative salmon ecosystem planning initiatives in a few subregions of BC and the Yukon. Our goal in these pilot ecosystem planning areas is to identify and prioritize actions and strategic recommendations that will benefit salmon habitat through partnering with the government of BC for our BC initiatives, as well as First Nations to steer this work. And then also to collaborate with others that have a really big role to play in the salmon ecosystem. And that, of course, includes local and regional governments. So IPSC is working towards this goal through several initiatives or objectives to meet these initiatives, working at the scale of aggregate watersheds to benefit species and watersheds really in a holistic way. Also taking an ecosystem approach informed by Indigenous and local knowledge, as well as Western science. We are funding Indigenous partners to ensure that we have really meaningful participation and increased capacity in these collaborative processes as well, and informing action through what we are calling integrated salmon ecosystem plans, being kind of the product of the work that we're doing together. So what do we mean by that? What are integrated salmon ecosystem plans? I will say first off that they'll be different in each of our planning areas as needs and direction from our partners are uniquely guiding this work. But fundamentally, they're really technically focused, not political, not determining rights or title, not offering decisions determined by partner jurisdictions. Rather, our work is in these collaborations, because it's not a decision-making entity, the plans are not legally binding and do not make commitments of parties. By coming together in a collaborative way, we hope that providing cohesive knowledge and rationale for what salmon need can be that strong voice for salmon in providing recommendations and information to decision makers and resource users in the watersheds. We're hoping, of course, to align where possible and relevant with our partners' strategies and interests, of course. And of course, IPSC is guided by DFO's Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative principles, which are listed here and which we hope to bring to all of our collaborative initiatives in this work. The plans themselves aim to summarize pressures on salmon ecosystems from the mountaintop to the valley or lake bottom, because all of that ecosystem really does touch salmon in some way, as they are a species that's considered a great connector across ecosystems. And identify important salmon habitat features that might need extra consideration in planning. And together in these collaborations, we'll make short, medium, and long-term recommendations for actions that guide conservation and restoration of salmon habitat. And although we're not an implementation kind of organization at this time, over the next 2 years of planning, we do aim to identify funding and implementation opportunities to support priority actions and see this work through following the planning phase. So now to the spaces where we are undertaking these pilots. We're working in 3 pilot areas. One is in the Yukon, I won't speak to that today, and 2 are in BC and depicted here. As you can see, they share a significant footprint with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. We initiated the IPSC pilots in this area for a few reasons: the number of at-risk salmon populations that I spoke to previously, significant pressures on salmon habitat from climate-related events over the last few years, a relatively high availability of information about habitats and pressures in this region. So we're really not starting from a place of you know, the bare minimum here. And really importantly, groups that are already really active in supporting improvements to aquatic habitat that we had identified excellent partnership opportunities with, and now which have come to fruition in a good way. We had originally identified the Thompson-Nicola area as a whole, and that's shown here by this entire sort of yellow and purple diagram on the map, and that's the Thompson Ecological Drainage Unit. But in developing these partnerships, it was really clear that there was a need for 2 separate processes, one in the Thompson-Shuswap, which is that northern, quite large section, and one in the Nicola. And these were based on existing partnerships and governance. In our Thompson-Shuswap area, we're working in partnership with BC and the Secwepemc Nations, coordinated by the Secwepemc Fisheries Commission. And that's through the Thompson-Shuswap Salmon Collaborative. So this area was already defined by that collaborative. In the Nicola process, the boundaries are also predefined by our partners in the Nicola Watershed Governance Partnership and BC's Nicola Watershed Planning Initiative. Here we're partnering with BC, six Nicola First Nations, and the Shwakam Tribal Council, and have been invited to provide recommendations that stem from this work into the Nicola Watershed Planning Initiative, which is the legal land use planning process taking shape in this area. So combined, these 2 processes cover about 54,000 kilometers, support 18 conservation units across 5 salmonid species. So these next 2 slides highlight a few of the regional benefits of integrated planning for salmon ecosystems in the Thompson and Nicola areas. These are aspects of our work that we think may be of interest to the board, staff, and public based on your regional growth strategy, policies, and mandate. But we're eager to hear from you whether these hit the mark or if there are others that we missed, of course. So far, we've heard a lot from collaborators and we really agree that these plans that we're developing need to add to the body of knowledge on ecosystem functions and locations that are really crucial to salmon survival and productivity. So we're aiming to identify and map important aquatic habitats that support salmon during various life stages and make this information accessible in ways that will meet participants' needs. So ideally, this information will support better protection of watercourses and fish populations from impacts during various regulatory determinations by both DFO and as well as many of our partners. We're also incorporating considerations for climate change as really a foundational element of our work. Using some innovative models, we're really looking to gain a deeper understanding of the impacts of climate change on salmon habitats and work with partners to assemble and integrate considerations around climate change into these recommendations that we'll be making. Our vision is also that the strategies and recommendations will support overall watershed health and ecosystem services for the benefit of existing and future generations. We wanted to put that in there to ensure that we're highlighting some areas that we're noting there might be alignment with your mandate as well. One other benefit, we really are dedicating actions towards improving partnerships and collaborations, and thus improving coordination of the work that we all do to support salmon. In this work that we're doing in IPSC. The partnerships that we've developed are truly collaborative with First Nations, BC, and DFO coming as equal partners to and co-leading the development of these plans through our partnership tables, which you see here depicted as kind of the steering committees. In addition to the steering committees, we aim to engage with the wider salmon community. This includes what we're considering academia, NGOs, other stakeholders, and of course, local governments as well. And this is through several engagement activities. We feel that this broad engagement will inform the development of the plans, ensure that they really reflect various viewpoints, and identify innovative solutions that we may not be able to identify without this broad engagement. Also, we want to ensure that these plans work for people and organizations that play a role in the salmon ecosystem, and would love to come out of this process with some level of endorsement and uptake by those that do play a role here and may be able to support implementation of the actions. So we recognize that the TNRD has a role to play in this as well, and may want to inform and help shape these plans so they can best serve you if you see that alignment. In both the Thompson and Nicola, we're continuing or ramping up engagement with the salmon community to help shape both how we engage and what comes from these plans and partnerships. And we would like to invite the TNRD technical staff to participate in the Thompson, Shuswap, and Nicola planning processes that we have underway. Your participation will both improve the outcomes of this initiative and hopefully benefit the TNRD through sharing and collaborating with other experts to add to the body of knowledge on salmon habitats, sharing about TNRD interests as they intersect with this work, and also sharing how you may use the salmon data, watershed data, and recommendations stemming from these plans so that you can help to shape how they're delivered and make sure they are of use to you. Thus far, there are many ways for staff to engage. Opportunities for engagement in the Thompson and Nicola will vary as these processes are, uniquely shaped. But there are opportunities to receive updates and information via email or newsletters. If there's specific topics or connection points we want to unpack, we would welcome direct information sharing with ourselves, IPSC, or our collaborative tables, or your participation in technical working groups if that's relevant as well. We're also hoping for your participation in workshops where we really are seeking broad salmon community input and feedback as planning progresses. And of course, as we move through these processes, we'll be seeking review on materials and documents as they're ready to share as well. But of course, all the way along, we welcome input, feedback, questions at any time, and I'll provide our contact information at the end. So depending on the capacity and your depth of interest in this type of work, we estimate that this commitment could be as minimal as 5 hours quarterly, but of course could grow from there. So in summary, we're seeking participation from the technical TNRD staff to support this collaborative and really urgent work to improve salmon habitat. We do think that TNRD has a role to play here as you have jurisdiction and influence in salmon outcomes and salmon habitat outcomes in this area. And we would like to identify TNRD staff members going forward to include in our outreach and engagement in both the Thompson, Shuswap, and Nicola planning initiatives. Hopefully this will benefit salmon, but also support TNRD if you see there are areas of alignment that this could work for you. I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, of course, we're happy to answer them now and follow up at any time. I'll just throw up my contact information here. As I said, I'm the manager. We also have Jamie Lynn online, our environmental planner for our program, and Tom Appleby, who wasn't able to join us today, but also is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caron. I know Director O'Reilly has a question. Director Getz, Director Houghton. We'll start off with Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very informative, and I really like the verbiage, and you're talking a lot about holistic approach, and I think that's incredibly important. I'm a city councilor here in Kamloops, so I'm speaking from a Kamloops front, and while we look at the TNRD as a whole, and it's very rural, we are very much an urban center. And we have different challenges here, and specifically as it relates to the habitat for salmon. And recently, going back about 3 weeks ago, we had a clean up the beach day in Kamloops. It was about 2 kilometers of beach only. And we had 1,300 pounds of trash that was picked up in a 2-kilometer spread after our CSO officers went through and cleared encampments off of the beaches. And so I guess what I'm looking for is we need help. We have about 110 kilometers of streams or riverfront, beachfront areas in Kamloops. And we are very challenged with places being dug out significantly, encampments being built into banks and salmon habitat, tunnels being put in with trap doors over top in salmon habitat. And it would be great if DFO could be somebody that could help us and come to the table to deal with these issues that really are creating a much larger problem. And if we're having 1,300 pounds in 2 kilometers, I can imagine how much has been on 110 kilometers in our city. And we need DFO's help with that. I'm wondering how you guys would be able to help with that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and I think a quite broad question as well. I mean, I think from the perspective on, and I'll speak from IPSC's kind of work and our mandate first, the goal in having that kind of perspective brought into a planning initiative where we're like identifying what do salmon need, gives us all that voice to like reflect back on and be a cohesive, sounding space to call out for that kind of resourcing and help. And I think that helps us all to move in that really good direction. So that's kind of the impetus for planning together. And I can absolutely see some of the types of recommendations and actions that would land in this type of ecosystem plan as being some policy, regulatory, and legislative direction or recommendations for where some things need to underpin that support for salmon habitat, but also education and outreach, specific boots on the ground type work. Like we need to do some cleanups. This is where there's some significant and important salmon habitat. So let's get some boots on the ground in some of those places. That could absolutely, like I see a place for that landing in the plan. And then, I mean, in terms of the broader DFO support, I think I would want to take your query offline for like what's available now. Like we're in a 2-year planning horizon, but certainly we don't want to negate the opportunity to take action while planning, right? So what are those opportunities to see where DFO could support some of that? And I don't have a quick answer at the tips of my fingers right now for you to access a certain part of the department for that, but I would be happy to take that offline. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Director Getz.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm the mayor of Merritt, and I'm pleased to see that you're looking at the Nicola River, but I'm wondering why we're not going to focus a little bit on the coal water after the 2021 flood, with the damage, the change of direction, and pretty much the loss of every single fertile egg that would have been in that river at that point in time. I'm quite sure that we're going to skip a spawning situation, and I'm just wondering how we reintroduce back into the coal water after we start to do dike repair. How we return a spawn that was missed. Now, we had some gentlemen up from UBC last week, and I asked the same question. And they kind of informed me that sometimes salmon get lazy and they'll just decide to go where they want to go, not necessarily where they were born. But I'm just wondering, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but what would be a timeline to a certain degree for a spawn being missed like that before the river became healthy again? Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're putting me on the spot. I can't answer that off the top of my head. I mean, I think our mind is towards like there's so much happening in all of these ecosystems. And there are these kind of, not to say one-off problems that keep popping up everywhere. The goal of this plan is to kind of like cohesively steer the ship in a good direction for salmon with like the right minds and the right opportunities at the table to do that. I would see again, like something like this being brought forward as like, what's the tangible action that we take in response to an emergency, in response to some kind of climate event to support salmon, and that being like a recommendation or an action that we could highlight and advocate for in the plan. Yeah, I don't think I could give you an answer to the timing of like when you could see regain productivity given that missed spawning set. Unfortunately, I would probably need a lot more of the details about that specific location and the populations that are there, which I don't have at my fingertips. But we're certainly not ignoring the cold water. Like the Nicola as a whole is encaptured, and I just brought us back to this slide. It's encaptured. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it is the entire Nicola watershed that would be like on our radar for planning. So absolutely, where there's issues happening in the cold water for various reasons, including those climate related events, we would want to flag those and understand what are the mitigation opportunities and what are the opportunities and actions that need to be put in place now to create some resilience going forward for salmon populations. I hope that helps. I kind of went around your answer or your question a little bit. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Director Houghton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation today. As much as I'm the area director for Area L of the TNRD, which extends east to Chase, up the hill to Westwold, Falkland, and then south to Stump Lake. So it's it got quite a bit of your watershed map involved in Area L. And I was just wondering, you explained who you're consulting with. Are you consulting with the water users or water rights people that have water rights, not only in just in agriculture, but in other things, so that we can work together on finding a solution and all this? I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we have to go down this road so we can avoid the situation we had in Westwold last year with agriculture versus fish war. And I don't want to see that again. And I know the ministries of water stewardship in this province and the Ministry of Agriculture have greatly improved their consultation with the water rights users, so we can work together on coming to a peaceful solution. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really, really big problem, and I agree. I don't want to see it go there either. Right now, the intent is that would be part of that like salmon community, and we're calling it the salmon community, but that's because like a lot of people, a lot of resource users, a lot of communities of practice have some role to play in the salmon ecosystem. So certainly wanting to reach into those groups that, you know, play a role in the salmon ecosystem. Right now, our engagement, I would say, is like growing. And so we're at that phase where we're identifying who are the right audiences for this specific planning initiative to reach into some of those conversations and understand where are those opportunities to look for what salmon need, but also understand those interests and values that are coming from all of the other resource users and values in the ecosystem as well, right? So I don't have a specific contact or name on our list of people that would be like the water users or water licensees in this district, but the goal would be to identify those and start reaching out as part of this the outreach opportunities that we listed here. Yeah, going forward.
Thank you.
Director Morris and then Director Blackwell.
And thank you through the chair. Just an observation and possibly a question. I live along the South Thompson River, and one of the concerns, which I know happen in many parts of the province, but is the riverbeds and the mud bogging that occurs on the riverbeds and the impact that it has in terms of our salmon stock, as it were, and the health. So my question would be is, what is the level of observing or enforcing that you do take on major salmon stock, like riverbeds, in particular? The South Thompson River is the one that I'm alluding to at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious about what you mean by observing. There are numerous stock assessment initiatives that are taking place to understand, you know, where the stocks are, when they're there, how many are returning back into their natal streams, etc. And so I don't know if that's what you mean. If you mean like actually observing riverbeds and impacts on riverbeds, I'm not actually aware of any specific research into that or any monitoring on that I'm aware of, but it's not to say it's not happening. But this is exactly the type of information that I think would be pertinent to this question. Like there are some things that we're still missing in terms of the impacts to salmon, or that maybe aren't captured in the literature or those risk analysis for salmon populations to date. And understanding what impacts are those? Where are they taking place? And what are the opportunities to work together to understand the mitigation possibilities, right? Like who would be responsible for monitoring and then also potentially enforcing, removal of that activity in the fish-bearing waterways during times that are really sensitive for salmon? We want to explore that with all of the right jurisdictions to understand how can we do this in a good way and all be kind of moving in that direction to support salmon habitat. So I'm not sure of the level of observation in that specific issue, but I am happy to dig back into DFO and see if there's anyone undertaking that work or research if that's of interest to you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think the where I was going into is that question of enforcement and vigilance, and where there may be a role that you could play. So thank you. Perhaps we'll have an opportunity to have a offline conversation for the future.
Sounds good.
Director Blackwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is specific to trying to understand the decision-making process related to climate change events. I'm really happy to see that that's a big part of the focus of this is to look at those sort of changes. So I'll use the example up the North Thompson Valley this past year, where the river, the access creek into the hatchery for the Sim First Nation actually dried up to the point that intervention was required. Who is involved and who comes together to make or approve decisions like that, where you would actually excavate or create a new channel in order to save salmon populations?
Yeah, I would say it probably depends on exactly, what the issue is. Certainly DFO's stock assessment teams and fish habitat protection teams that are responsible for understanding kind of impacts from activities on the landscape would be involved in that, as well as DFO's Habitat Restoration Center of Expertise, who have a lot of people kind of locally on the ground understanding what the best methodology would be to undertake that type of restoration. Absolutely. So from DFO's end, I would say those would be the key kind of players. We also work very closely in all of the kind of mitigation measures that I've seen in the last year of really severe drought impacts with the Indigenous communities that are very locally in any of those places, as well as often, well, definitely not often, definitely British Columbia, WLRS is quite involved in some of those procedures, understanding, providing input from that subject matter expertise around biology and ecosystems there. I want to say that often even ENGOs get involved. So I don't know about this specific space, but I have seen, funding for this type of work come through the Pacific Salmon Foundation and organizations like that as well. So it can be a myriad of people, but from DFO's perspective, certainly stock assessment, who are really monitoring those fish in real time and during the season, the Center of Expertise on Habitat, as well as the Fish and Fish Habitat Protection Program would be the key players, I'd say.
Thank you. Director Hamer-Jackson.
Yeah, excuse me. Mine is the North Thompson River also. Recently, we had someone up the North Thompson who lost about 400 feet of riverbank, and it went in about 90 feet deep and just fell into the river, and which obviously changed the flow of the river. So I'm wondering what the effect of the salmon run is on that, and where we should go from there to protect those riverbanks.
Yeah, such a good question. And I will say at this stage in the game, I don't have a solid answer for you, but that's exactly what we want to uncover, right? Certainly there are slumping issues, sedimentation entering the river that change the river itself and potentially, create, but also potentially destroy important salmon habitats, but also then are impacting people and landscapes, right? For the work that we're doing, we're all doing on the land as well. And so where best to tackle that? Like in what order, at what scale, and what are the best procedures to tackle something like that in a very localized, specific area? But also if we're seeing this across the landscape, which I think we are, like this is not the only example that's come up of, the riverbed really, or the riverbank significantly shifting, degrading in some way. If this is happening holistically and frequently, what are the mechanisms to underpin why is this happening? And are there legislative or regulatory or policy tools that could help us, and enforcement tools that could help us to really get to the root cause of those kinds of issues and identify some best practices for making sure that things like that are mitigated, are rectified. And some of that is going to happen in real time and are much more kind of a triage process. Like this riverbank is falling right now, tomorrow. We need to stabilize it. And some of that needs to happen immediately. But we're coming at it from that holistic kind of long-term planning lens. What does this system need? What does salmon need in this system to support kind of resiliency in their ecosystem that will include some of those solutions around, you know, bank stabilization. Yeah, so I don't have a answer for that specific case, but the planning is attempting to support getting to those answers a bit more holistically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so possibly I could contact you and you could give me a little more guidance.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I would definitely be able to point you to those people that are like boots on the ground, actually like shovel ready, you know, willing and able to help on those, some of those triage cases that are absolutely going to be needed to be supported immediately versus like waiting for a long-term plan to be developed. Yeah, so definitely give me a call for sure.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Director Rain, I see your hand up.
Yes, you mentioned salmon stock in decline. How big is the decline?
It depends on the salmon stock. And I'll just bring it back to that. And sorry, this slide was really intended to give you the big picture, and I didn't want you to read all the details. So apologies that it's really small. But really, like where we see this COSEWIC status, where it's endangered or threatened or special concern, that means that the population has been in decline. Oh, I'm gonna get the statistics wrong, Director Rain, I apologize, but for at least like 3 generations and at least 30% of its population is like from its kind of historical average. And we know that the historical average is also not maybe an appropriate benchmark, right? So we have to consider that with climate change and a lot of the impacts on the landscape, that these populations are probably more significantly depressed than even using that as our benchmark. But yes, that's one metric that we could use to think about, you know, across all of these populations, they're considered at risk using that benchmark from COSEWIC.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? No, I see no more hands in the air. So thank you, Ms. Curran. I know that there was an ask that you are requesting that TNRD staff be awarded time to participate in salmon ecosystem planning engagement sessions with IPSC partners. And I'm going to leave that for as a conversation to be had between you and staff, just so that they can work out what their capacity is for assisting you with that.
You want, so us to reach to staff to understand what that capacity is? Is that what you mean?
If you could reach out to staff and maybe then you could have those discussions directly with staff about what you are looking for, what the expectations are. Staff can then assess what their capacity is and you can see what you can work out.
Is there a best contact to have in our back pocket for that first reach out, or should we we can find some great contacts, I'm sure, on your website as well?
Best person to contact, he's indicating himself as our CAO, Scott Hildebrand.
Okay.
So just reach out to Mr. Hildebrand and he will be able to put you in touch with the right people.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that advice and time, and we will certainly have that follow up with your team members.
Thank you very much. And thank you for presenting here today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Before we continue with item 6.2, a reminder from Director Newstater that today is Moose Hide Day, May the 16th. The Moose Hide campaign has been going for more than a decade to raise awareness of male violence against women and children, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So you can find out more about the Moose Hide campaign online. Today is the day of recognition for that, but of course it's something that should be going on 365 days a year. Move on to item 6.2. We have a building infraction on a property in electoral area J. This is an opportunity for the owners to make representations. Is there anyone here today to speak to this? No, no one online? All right, we move on to 6.3, which is a stop work order expired permit on a property in electoral area P. This is an opportunity for the owners of that property to make representations. Are they here today or is anyone online? No, then we move right along to item 7.1, building infraction stop work order in electoral area J. We do have a staff recommendation. Director Ranta, seconded by Director Blackwell. Any discussion on this? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? Gentlemen online?
Aye.
I,
Thank you. No one opposed? Then that is carried. Item 7.2, building infraction electoral area P. There is another staff recommendation. Director Middleton, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Any discussion on this? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 8.1, Gold Country Service Repeal Bylaw number 2836, 2024. There is a board report and a staff recommendation. Director Laird, seconded by Director Ranta. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? That is carried. 8.2 zoning amendment bylaw number 2839, recommendation that it be adopted. Thank you, Director Onslow, seconded by Director Thorpe. Any discussion on this? On the question, all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, that is carried. Item 8.3 zoning amendment bylaw number 2841, 2024. We do have 3 staff recommendations. Okay, who moved it? Okay, Director Getz, seconded by Director Laird. Any discussion on recommendation number 1? This is in accordance with, this is a provincial requirement. No discussion, no questions or comments on the question, then all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Carried?
Move to.
All right, Director Ranta, seconded by Director Sarai. Thank you. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Vice Chair Smith has moved recommendation 3. Director Sarai seconds that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Was that 2?
yes,
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 8.4, notice enforcement amendment bylaw number 2845, another trio of recommendations. And just a note that the recommendations, they should all read notice enforcement amendment bylaw, not of. Thank you, Director Laird. Director Smith seconds that. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed, if any? Carried. Move to Director Smith, seconded by Director Getz. Discussion? All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. And we have a third. Director Blackwell, thank you kindly. Seconded by Director Hall. Discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Carried. Item 8.5, Thompson-Nicola Regional District Park Use Bylaw number 2852, 2024. Another tree, good things come in threes, don't they? We have another a trio of recommendations.
Move one. Second.
Okay, Director Laird, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Any discussion on this? Director Ranta. Microphone.
Then I go over to page 96, and in the middle, it's under park hours, it says, except where otherwise designated, all TNRD parks will be closed to the public daily from dawn to dusk. That doesn't make any sense at all. And I would propose an amendment on page 96 that the closed to the public daily from dusk to dawn, and then it all works out.
We want people to use our parks, contrary to what it says here. What's that? Low maintenance, yes, very low maintenance. All right, thank you for catching that, Director Ranta. So do we need to do anything official, or can we take that as read? Corporate Officer Lois?
Chair, Mr. Vieira actually has a couple of other comments that we'd like to bring up as staff identified issues and typos. So then perhaps we can roll all of those into a single amendment that we formally note.
All right, thank you. Mr. Vieira?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in addition to that correction, which I agree with, we'll need to make that correction on the Appendix 11 under the penalty section. Under 12.1 and 12.5 under starting a fire and failure to extinguish a fire. The early and late payment penalty is currently listed at $0. That should be read as not applicable, NA, not $0. So we'd like to propose that as also a friendly amendment to be considered.
Sorry, which item was that, Mr. Vieira?
So under the Appendix 11, so at the very end of the bylaw, there's a table, and 12.1 and 12.5 of that table. The A2 and A3 column to be changed to NA instead of $0.
All right, thank you. So we have 3 amendments, 2 regarding the appendix and 1 regarding the times during which the parks will be closed. Correct? Any more? While we're doing this? Pardon me, Director Sal?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the appendix as well. A2, early payment penalty. I'm assuming that's like how much you would pay if you pay early. I wonder if that could or should be renamed early payment discount, because it actually, sorry, no, you know what, never mind. Sorry, my bad. All good. I was just thought it sounded different to what it would mean to a lay person when I first read it, but I think that it makes sense. No, all good. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. Are we able to be read a first and second time as amended, Mr. Lois?
Chair, that'll be easiest, yes, if we could get the whole bylaw read the first and second time as amended with those changes in place.
So do we need to have another motion on the amendment, or is it considered a friendly amendment?
I think those are all both obvious and clear enough that it can be done as a friendly amendment with the consent of the mover and seconder.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so is there any further discussion on this? All right, so the motion is the Thompson-Nicola Regional District Park Use Bylaw number 285/2024 be read a first and second time as amended. Oh no, that's just reminding people what we're voting on. So all those in favor of that?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's carried. So the second recommendation will again be as amended. Director Laird, thank you. Director Ranta seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then the third one as. Thank you. Director Ranta, seconded by Director Newstater. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Miscellaneous bylaw repeal, bylaw number 2853. This is a fun little housekeeping item. Again, 3 recommendations. Director Blackwell moves recommendation 1. Seconded by Director Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed? Oh, sorry, gentlemen online, I cut you off.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That's carried.
Move to.
Director Stamer, thank you. Seconded by Director Hayward. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Carried. And a third. Sorry, who's that? Director Thorpe, seconded by Director Newstater. Okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. 9.1, temporary use permit application number TUP 73. This is regarding Clearwater Valley Road and an ice cream truck.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you, Director Blackwell, seconded by Director Stamer. Is there any discussion on this? Only if he comes here with ice cream? Yes, I would.
One of the proponents is actually in the room, so you'll have to talk nicely to her, so.
Oh, okay. We all like ice cream. Is there any discussion on this? No. We all do like ice cream, clearly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, that is carried. 9.2, development variance permit number DVP 121, Mammoth Lake, BC.
So move.
Director Houghton, seconded by Director Sarai. Is there any discussion on this? No hands in the air or online, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That's carried. Item 9.3, floodplain exemption application, Coyote Valley Road. So Director Thorpe, seconded by Director Ranta. Any discussion on this? Very pretty area just below the Boston Flats Eco Depot for anyone who hasn't been down there. All right, no discussion, no hands. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That one is carried. We move on to CAO Hildebrandt's verbal report. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Roden. I just got a few topics along with Mr. Kelly has a few topics to update the board on. So good afternoon, everyone. The first one being emergency preparedness. The weather is changing, as we all know, warming up, maybe not today, but significantly. We have some concerns across the province and including us at the TNRD. We're certainly thinking about our friends in Fort Nelson and Fort McMurray right now as they're dealing with some very challenging situations and fire threat. We're continuing as a TNRD to be very prepared and to make sure our emergencies are well managed in our electoral areas across our municipalities. Our dedicated emergency operations center space is set up and is ready to be activated at a moment's notice. I know our EOC team is already dealing with some smaller fires over the last few weeks in our regional district and communicating on a regular basis. So we are ready to act as necessary. We're also continuing to work with our residents on emergency preparedness education and messaging. Fire Smart Coordinator, Mr. Funk, has attended many community events already, and we've completed more than 95 Fire Smart home assessments. and assessed close to 306 structures to date. We have been working with our TNRD fire departments as well to help spread local emergency preparedness messaging as well. During Emergency Preparedness Week earlier this month, we did a test of the Voyant Alert System that went out to more than 14,000 subscribers to our system. We issue emergency notices within our 10 electoral areas, and those areas have a combined population of just over 17,000 residents. So we're confident that the Voyant Alert is working and getting it to the large majority of our residents. During Emergency Preparedness Week, we also issued a release to share resources on how people can prepare, and we also did daily posts on our TNRD social media channels. I can't stress enough, the season is ramping up much quicker than expected, and we all need to be prepared, so please share the word. Secondly, I want to talk about the TNRD and the City of Kamloops' new household hazardous waste disposal site. It's officially open. As I mentioned, it's a joint collaboration with the City of Kamloops following board approval late last year. The site is located at Mount Paul Industrial Park at 480 Okanagan Way and is operated by Northwood Environmental. In previous years, we would hold one-day roundup events in Kamloops and Merritt for residents to drop off household hazardous waste. But now this waste can be disposed of for free all year round at this facility. So it's some great news. And it welcomes all residents within our boundaries, and it's open from Tuesday to Saturday from 8:30 to 4:30. Our regional solid waste management plan sets a goal of reducing landfill waste of 500 kilograms per person per year. And this will be one step to help us achieve that. The household hazardous waste site also aligns with our strategic plan when it comes to livability and built environment, and of course, responsible governance and service excellence. We're planning for a grand opening event in early June, and our communications and solid waste teams will have more information to share with the public and the board. And then finally, just two other quick updates. I wanted to just mention SILGA. It was certainly a very successful conference from my perspective and the feedback I received from board members. Our sponsorship was very well received as the TNRD. Our resolutions passed and will be going to UBCM. I think there was lots of great learnings, lots of great conversations and takeaways, and we're excited to see this in Merritt next year and keeping within the regional district. And then UBCM, you're going to see a report and a conversation happen here at this meeting. We also had a conversation with the EA directors this morning. Staff want to be successful going into UBCM, and we're trying to get ahead of it as far in advance as we can. So we're looking for topics for advocacy to make sure that we can start building those relationships with ministry staff and starting to book those minister and staff meetings. As I mentioned, a report will be coming in the very near future during this meeting. And then finally, I'm going to be away in June, and Mr. Vieira is going to act on my behalf. So I will make sure all the tough decisions will be added to that agenda. So I will certainly pass over to Mr. Kelly, please, for just a quick few updates.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril Hildebrand. Just briefly, a couple things happened since the last verbal update that I provided to the board. This past month, staff met with staff from Simp First Nation for a more in-depth review of their interim stewardship plan. This interim stewardship plan, and the reason that staff met together is to just better our understanding of how Simp makes decisions on the land. It was a very successful meeting. We had a number of staff members attend. The interim plan is available online for those who are interested and can be found on Simp's website. Also, this month, we initiated communications with the impacted First Nations communities regarding the 4 OCPs that are being updated as directed by the board. So I've been working with the planning department to have that communication go out. Lastly, last week or the week before, myself and a few other staff members, as well as a number of directors, met with Connecting Communities representatives from the province of BC. We're currently working with directors to identify problem areas and share that with the program and ministry staff, and working closely with them to establish a better understanding of the needs of the TNRD as it relates to cell phone and internet services. that's everything, but if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hildebrand or Mr. Kelly? No. No questions? All right, we move along to item 10.1.2. SIMP Thompson-Nicola Regional District Protocol Agreement. We do have a recommendation. Mr. Black, or Director Blackwell, thank you. Director Bass seconds. Any discussion on this? No. Thank you to staff. Thank you to all involved for getting this together and giving us lots of opportunities to review it. And I think it's a great step in a really good direction, and I think it really strengthens the partnerships in the North Thompson. It's nice to see other communities in the North Thompson Valley coming to their own agreements with SIMC as well. All right, on the recommendation, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Thank you, that is carried. As Mr. Kelly alluded to, or Mr. Hildebrand, sorry, there is Union of BC Municipalities Advocacy 10.1.3. We do have a report from Mr. Kelly, and just important to note that we're not necessarily seeking to lock down our minister meeting requests at this meeting, but just there was a list there of what we met with ministers about last year. So any thoughts that anyone has about what meetings that they would like to see us pursue this year? Just bearing in mind that it's quality, not quantity, that is probably the guiding factor. So we have some possible topics here, small utility system funding, which was of course the subject of a SILGA resolution that we brought forward 2 weeks ago. Invasive plant control and funding, which, like the name in the title, just seems to go on and gets worse every year. Connectivity, obviously a big issue for TNRD, especially the electoral areas. Emergency management, top of everyone's mind. Highway road safety, huge issue, especially in the North Thompson. And funding inequities, shortfalls, that's a hospital district matter. Anyone's thoughts? Director Blackwell?
Yeah, just maybe a question to staff. I was kind of blindsided in a great way by with TELUS Mascon a few weeks ago, or last week, to find out that under Project Penny, they were replacing all of our copper with fiber and going to basically install 1 gig service to town by fall, after basically telling me nothing was going to happen for the foreseeable 2-year future. Have we had any updates on actual projects within the TNRD since the last presentation we had, or that speak to this kind of change?
Through Chair Roden, thank you for the question. I know we had a great meeting with the ministry and with ministry staff. And there's a lot of things I think that she kind of alluded to that were coming in the future. And I think her comments were there's going to be a lot of connectivity projects that will impact our regional district that they're working through in the next number of months. But by the fall of this year, she should have a lot of those kind of in the public and ready to talk more about. So that was the kind of the main point I got out of that meeting. I'm not sure if there's anybody else that would like to jump in, but good news to come is what we're hoping for.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, comments, thoughts on these? Director Lepso?
Would the constant downloading be a possible topic? I know it is with our staff.
I can take that. That one, I think we could probably apply to every meeting we have in a way. So that could be a theme within each of the meetings. So it's something we can certainly take back and build into our plans. I know if I could also add our EA committee this morning, the meeting this morning had a good conversation about these topics as well. And I think there's a lot of other ideas that came up that would fit within these themes. So among others, so I think we're in a good place. We just wanted to make sure the board was aligned on these as kind of the main priorities.
Director O'Reilly?
Thank you. On the hospital district side, through Minister of Health, but shifting the message a little bit, talking about the cancer center, hopefully. Phase 3 at Royal Inland Hospital and the planning stages for that, which won't happen for another 13 to 14 years. And as well specifically, and it's becoming a much bigger issue and the province is aware of it, but long-term care beds. And the significant shortage that we have here, they are aware of that. And I would also request that we meet with Ministry of Municipal Affairs, as we have a request in through them, the TNRD does, around the boundary review motion that was put forward by the previous board and this board as well. And just to get an update on that as to where that will go and how that's shaping up. Thank you.
So you would like the boundary review, meeting with Ministry of Municipal Affairs added to the list, or would that be maybe something better pursued by staff?
I think we should have a meeting with them and an update on that and try to understand where they're at. It was a motion put forward by the board some years ago. And I believe it's now finally with staff there, but I think it's worth talking to the minister about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly take that for sure. And the feedback on the hospital district, we can include within that topic as well.
Okay. Is everyone broadly happy with the 6 topics that are there with the addition of a 7th topic, which is Ministry of Municipal Affairs and going over the boundary review? Just to get the temperature of the room. Everyone's happy? I see Director Getz, I do see you making the peace sign there, trying to. Go ahead.
I was just wondering what are the things that we're going to be doing this year because it's an election year? I'm wondering if maybe the chair, the vice chair and the CAO may want to meet with the other 2 leaders of the opposition and the other 2 leaders just to let them know that we're here. As a council and merit, we're going to be doing the same thing and meeting with some shadow ministers just to let them know what we're doing as well. So it might be, because it's an election year, you may want to just make a quick stop in and say hello, representing the TNRD, just so they know who we are.
Thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Thorpe.
Just to follow up, the conversation we had this morning with the EA directors, are those topics included as well?
Yes, a lot of them, obviously, around emergency management. I know a lot of that was brought up and so those are certainly looped in, but there's also a number of other advocacy topics that the EA directors did flag, especially around the ALR and the ALC. I think that was probably the biggest one that diverts from the main 6 that are here. And so staff will certainly work to include that as well in addition to these 6.
Okay, so the DFA and the building codes as well?
Yeah, and so that would be, and I would have to check to see what ministry that was with, but yes, long story short, we will work to include the EA director's priorities as well into
Perfect.
these.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, additions to this list and what else has been proposed? There is still a little bit of time if you have a brainwave in the middle of the night or at the weekend or whenever you have your brainwaves, then please write it down and be in touch with staff. And they, I know, will work their hardest to make sure that we get a meeting either with the minister or with their staff, which is sometimes much more productive than meeting with the ministers. Don't tell the ministers I said that. But yes, please do write down. And if we can't get it, last year we asked for several minister meetings. We ended up getting a few of them with staff, and those, I have to say, were very productive meetings. So it's not as if we're getting a second tier, second rate meeting if we're not meeting with ministers. Mr. Corporate Officer, do we need a motion to this effect or?
Thank you, Chair. I don't believe a motion is needed at this point. I think if you were looking at instructing Mr. Kelly to severely change tack, then that would be appropriate. But in this case, you seem to be broadly content with his proposals.
No changing tack. We're all rowing in the same direction. That's awesome. All right. So we're going to have another busy UBCM, it looks like. We move on to item 10.1.4, Merit Fire Protection Services Contract. Director Laird, thank you very much. Seconded by Director Smith, thank you. Discussion. On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed, if any? That is carried. 10.1.5 Monty Creek Fire Hall Contract Award. Very good news indeed.
I so move.
Director
Second.
Houghton, thank you. Director Stamer seconds that. Any discussion? Director Houghton.
I just want to say, my short term here on the board, this is probably going to be one of the highlights of our career, but I know I didn't have basically nothing to do with the project until it got going, but I really want to thank Director Morris, former Director Rothenberger, and late Chair Gillis on spearheading this along with his staff to service that area of Area L that doesn't have any fire protection, as well as Lee's area on the north side of the river by Lafarge. So we're gradually getting these areas, you know, with some form of fire protection. It'll be a great day come the fall or whenever next year when we get this project going and get it staffed and get it full of equipment. And I know Jamie was saying that the contractor's eager to get to work, so that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Morris? No? Yes?
No, just to add, the work and the time that has gone into this project, and we're almost there. So yeah, Doug and I are both looking forward to it, as well as all of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. 10.1.6 Repeal of Tobiano Service Establishments. We have two recommendations. Director Elliott, seconded by Director Ranta. Thank you. Alternate Director Elliott, sorry. Old habits die hard. And seconded by Director Ranta. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor then?
Aye.
Any, carried. All right. Alternate Director Elliott's reminding us here why we miss her so much. Director Ranta seconds that. Any discussion on item number 2? On the question, all those in favor? Director Sao?
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? That is carried. 10.1.7 Intra-Library Delivery Services.
Second.
Alternate Director Elliott, seconded by Director Newstater. Discussion? Or was that Director Bass? I'm sorry. Okay. Director Rain.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, how does this compare to the previous contract? Sorry, how does it compare the value to the previous contract?
Thank you, Director Rain. Ms. Moore is just coming to the microphone to answer that for you.
Hello, through the chair to Director Rain. Thank you for your question. Very important that we go out to public tendering on these major contracts. We actually have a lower cost from the previous contracts. So I think that's an answer to your question. And I should also like to add that it includes a supplementary delivery to Merritt, which will see an enhancement to the residents of Merritt for library services. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? On the question, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. Item 10.1.8 calendar change for Committee of the Whole and Parcel Tax Review Panel. I did allude to this earlier in my chair's report.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith, seconded by Director Getz. Any discussion? All right, on the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Aye.
Whoops.
Aye.
Gentlemen, you're in favor, opposed, carried. 10.1.9 regional grants and sponsorships. We do have two options here as recommendations. What is the board's pleasure on this item? Move option one. Director Thorpe moves option one, seconded by Director Newstater. So this is the board approving a total of $25,000 in regional grants and sponsorship requests to Kamloops International Buskers Festival, Pritchard Community Association, Kamloops Exhibition Association, Twisted Desert Music Society, Project X Theater Production Society, and Spence's Bridge Community Club. Any questions or comments? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
You're in favor, Director Rain? No?
No, opposed.
You're opposed? All right. And is there anyone else opposed? Director Rain is opposed. That is carried. All right, we move on to 10.110, building permit activity highlights. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that report? No. We have two committee reports, no action needed on either of them, but this is the opportunity if anyone has any questions or comments about anything they read in those draft minutes. No, all right. Action requested, District of North Vancouver. They are requesting support for a UBCM resolution, and I did discuss this with staff in my agenda review session. We are going to start getting lots of these in the run-up to UBCM asking us to support. The TNRD as a board would not support a resolution, but everyone here who is going to UBCM will have an opportunity to support or not this resolution and all others when they get to UBCM. They are not asking us to provide a letter of support. They're not asking us to sign a proclamation. So I would suggest that we move this to correspondence for information only, that we deal with any upcoming requests of the same nature in the run-up to UBCM the same way. Lots of nods. Awesome. Thank you very much. And then we move on to information only. We have Ministry of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities and Comox Valley Regional District for information. Does anyone have any questions or comments or any actions required out of those pieces of correspondence? Excuse me. No. All right. We move on to new business members. Does anyone have any new business? Director Houghton.
Make this short and sweet. The other day, I think it was last week, Corbin, Alex, myself, yourself, Chair Roden, and at our EA directors meeting, I forgot to mention CEO Hildebrandt was involved. We had a great meeting with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Agriculture to talk over topics that we thought would pertain to us. We had a good meeting, and probably what I got out of that as a newbie to this outfit is that the assistant deputy seemed to know what was going on within ministry more so than the higher up. So with all courtesy to the minister and her EA, they're both new at the role. And when I went on the bus with them last year on the Monday of UBCM, they admitted, I mean, they're new to it and they're learning, but they're willing to learn. But we had a good, thorough meeting with the lady that I thought really knew what was going on. And I think we all got lots out of it. We did talk about the LR and we held it up at the Ministry of Environment office there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Houghton. Yes, I agree. I think it was an excellent meeting and the ADM was certainly extremely well informed and the staff. I thought it was very productive. Anyone else have any new business they would like to bring up? No, we move right along then to item 14.1, notice of motion, and Mr. Vieira would like to present a small report with 2 slides, he tells me, prior to us discussing the notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context in anticipation of questions around this notice of motion. I'll just wait for that those slides to pop up. Regarding cost, or anticipated costs of this notice of motion. No. Yeah, it's the top one there, Justin. Thanks, Justin. So the currently this notice of motion passes. I should clarify from a staff perspective. We understand where this notice of motion is coming from, and operationally it causes no challenges for us. Really, it just comes down to a cost and what that cost would be. And if we waive fees or change how we charge fees, ultimately it ends up being recovered through the region-wide service, region-wide solid waste service that paid into by all municipalities and electoral areas except Kamloops. So currently there's only 2 municipalities who do a yard waste cleanup that would be impacted by this. So the numbers for this year are what's in front of you here. So it would only be about a $1,600 value in fees that the TNRD would be not receiving through fees, and therefore in theory would have to collect through taxation. Now the next slide is, I guess the best way to explain it is a hypothetical worst case scenario. So if, because of this notice of motion being approved, if it is approved, all municipalities decided to also do a yard waste cleanup, we've estimated what the potential fees that or revenue that we would not receive through that and the costs associated with that. So the final column there, it's roughly $25,000 in fees that we would be hypothetically missing out on, and that would be kind of our upper end estimate of the cost. But the actual costs based on this year's data is only $1,600. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. And I see, hang on, Director Blackwell, let me write this down. I've got a little list. Director Blackwell, Director Stamer, and I just wanted to say, I'm going to, since it's my notice of motion, that I understand the $25,000 in fees. Ashcroft and Cache Creek, most of what we pick up or what is picked up is yard waste. So if the village of Ashcroft, say, picks up yard waste from 100 residences during this event, we are charged $1,600. If those 100 residents took it all in their own car or truck, they would not get charged anything because it is yard waste and there is no fee for taking that to an eco depot or a transfer station. And in light of the fact that we are trying to encourage people to fire smart, in a perfect world, if you're cleaning your yard, you will be responsible for taking that yard waste to the eco depot or the transfer station. In a perfect world, that's taking responsibility. We don't live in a perfect world. Not everyone has that ability, especially if you are heeding the advice of our fire chief and ripping up the hedge of 20-foot cedars that you have beside your house, which are a fire risk. That is very difficult for a person, a resident, to dispose of themselves. So we are trying to encourage people to fire smart their properties, and we are trying to make it as easy as possible. The breakdown that I received from our Director of Public Works and our CAO was that it's the cost to us of the tipping fees, $1,600. It's the backhoe is $2,500, dump trucks $3,300. So the total 3-day expense for everything for doing this in Ashcroft is $7,600, of which $1,600 is the fee at the transfer station or the eco depot, I'm sorry. But it was more just trying to encourage people to do the right thing, to fire smart their yards, take away the barriers. We in Ashcroft used to do one in the spring and fall. We have now cut that back to spring only. We've also been doing it in Ashcroft for more than 50 years, as the newspaper in the town shows in its records. So this is not something that we've just started doing. We've been doing it for a long time. We'd like to continue doing it, and we'd like to try to encourage other places to do it as well. It does come at a cost, as Mr. Vieira rightly noted. So there we go. I have Director Blackwell, and then I have Director Stamer, and anyone else put up your hands, please. Director Blackwell.
Sorry, I see Director Zhao online as well. Yeah, no, I think, thank you for that clarification, Madam Chair, because I was getting a little mystified there, because basically anybody could drive into the Clearwater Eco Depot and dump yard waste for free. So this is more probably to you for how the process works. Are you using contractor and or district of our Village of Ashcroft staff to do this work? Is that how it's working? And a
How it
follow-up?
works is we advertise well in advance. We say the date, Cache Creek operates in very similar fashion. We let our residents know that these are the dates for extra yard waste pickups. We do, I know Cache Creek this year offered to pick up tires on tires as well, and appliances. So it's basically things that if residents took them to the Eco Depot, they would be able to drop them off for free. And we tell people to put them out front, and then the village comes around, village crew comes around with the dump truck, picks it up and takes it to the Eco Depot.
So, sorry for further clarification, this is part of a curbside pickup of you have a curbside waste pickup already, whereas Clearwater does not. It has a contract service that does that independently of the district of Clearwater. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So this would only be for, and I believe there are two areas in the TNRD that have, two electoral areas that have curbside pickup, area J and area A or
Area B.
area B. So, you know, theoretically, it could include those two areas of those electoral areas as well, if they wanted to take advantage. Director Stamer, then I have Director Thorpe and Director Sal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just so, I mean, I'm in favor of us trying to, you know, do as much fire smarting as we can in our communities. But you just mentioned something, and I just want to ask for clarification. Ashcroft is picking up recycling materials commercially from residents?
Sorry, we're picking up recyclable material?
That's my question.
Yes.
Is that what you just said?
Yes. It's in order to expedite, because in spring, we have a lot of people who are doing major yard work, and it is a barrier to some people to be able to say, like I said, chop down a cedar hedge or an old tree. They simply don't have the capacity in their own vehicle to take it away to the Eco Depot. And so the village offers, if they will cut it up into the appropriate lengths, everything has to be appropriate lengths and widths, et cetera, piled up neatly in front of their property, and then the village comes by and picks it up.
Okay, that's not really what I asked, because you said recycling materials like tires and such, so that's a totally different issue. But yeah, no, I certainly support it. I'd like to know more information on how we would go forward with this, because many of the municipalities don't do that. We don't do any of that pickup commercially, and I understand going forward that there could be some challenges, particularly with seniors and people that don't have pickups to be able to, you know, bring their yard waste on a regular basis and fire smarting materials. But there's also some other issues in regards to the recycling end of things that I'd like to get ahead of as well. And it's a different issue, but it's something that we should be discussing, because we'd like to be able to do that as, you know, included in the service to our community.
Thank you. Director Thorpe.
Okay, so this is kind of naive, but so anybody that takes their stuff to the recycling depot, it's free. So anybody that has a curbside pickup, if that curbside pickup takes it, then they're being charged. So basically the municipalities, right? And area J and part of O.
We pay for curbside pickup in Ashcroft. Residents are
Right.
charged on their utility bills every year, so they pay for curbside pickup of their garbage.
Okay,
This is an additional one-time only deal where they can put these other items out front on specified days only, which are not garbage pickup days usually. And then the village will come by and pick up these recyclable materials
and take it, and
to
then
the Eco Depot.
if that contractor or the village takes it to the Eco Depot, then they're charged, right?
Yes.
So when we're looking at who is going to pay for all of this, like the additional dumping fees is, sorry, lack of better word, are you saying now that the whole regional district is going to cover it? As opposed just to what in practice has been the village of Ashcroft and the village of Cache Creek?
My argument is that if we pick up yard waste from 100 houses, the village of Ashcroft is charged to drop them at the Eco Depot.
Okay.
If those 100 residents took all of that themselves in their individual cars, there would be no charge.
Right? So anybody in an EA who takes their own garbage or recycling, whatever, isn't being charged for this, right?
Correct.
Now, the village is. So now we're going to have an increase potentially of up to $25,000. How is that going to be spread out? Is each individual municipality going to cover their own costs, or are you looking for the whole regional district to cover that $25,000?
I get what you're saying. I think where I'm stumbling is that if those 100 residents took that yard waste in their 100 individual vehicles, the TNRD would not be making any money because those people would not be paying anything.
Okay.
So if the village of Ashcroft was not charged the $1,500, this is where I'm not very good with numbers, but the TNRD isn't getting anything from those 100 people individually driving up one after the other. So if the village of Ashcroft is not charged $1,500, then the TNRD isn't really losing anything because it's not as if those 100 people were paying anything to start with.
I get what you're saying. I
So,
just flipping it through my head.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got Director Sal, Vice Chair Smith, and then alternate Director Elliott. So Director Sal?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just sharing a feedback from my residents regarding the Eco Depot surfaces in the past. I totally understand. I think that really clarified what Director Thorpe and yourself was talking about just now. However, I'm just looking at the end impact is that there will be, yes, TNRD isn't making more money, but the end result in taxation is gonna, $25,000 divided across the whole entire TNRD would probably be very little. But I'm just thinking of, when I go to my residents and explain to them, what's going on and why, and in Area A without curbside service, to be part of this program, it would be a hard sell for me because in the past, we've gotten rid of the free dump day when I believe last year or early in my term this term. I remember distinctly there was a strong pushback accusing the TNRD of penny pinching and a removal of free dump day. Oh, then the residents were accusing us of then more people are going to illegally dump because we removed that free dump day. I don't agree with that, for the record, because just because somebody doesn't provide for free and I break the law, that's not a justification. But yeah, so just sharing that, it would be a tough sell for me to approach my resident that the end result is that there is increased taxation where they don't necessarily are able to participate in Area A without curbside service. So just sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Vice Chair Smith, Director Elliott, and then Director Rain. I see your hand up as well. So Vice Chair Smith?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I've learned we like to talk about is water waste and washrooms. For Logan Lake, one of the things that we did, actually, we do for Fire Smart Initiative, a waste roundup But we have it just in central locations, so we might have 4 or 5 locations within the community that waste is dropped off to and picked up from those locations and then taken, just as a suggestion for anyone out there, just as an alternative. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Alternate Director Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jamie, this question is for you. Because our truck is on a contract for so many days a week, and our tipping fees, our garbage goes to Kamloops, and we pay tipping fees to Kamloops. What would happen if you put this in place?
Thank you through the chair. I guess first off to clarify, we're not proposing that we implement this service in the electoral area curbside collection. I think the point the chair was making just that in theory that they would fall within this and could do it for free. So if there was direction to go that route, we would probably, where would we bring it? Probably bring it to the nearest TNRD facility that accepts yard waste, but our electoral area curbside collection services pay all applicable fees, and those fees are covered by that service area. So Area J taxation pays for the garbage collection, which includes all applicable disposal fees, and those fees then go into the revenue of the regional solid waste service.
So my assumption is that it would be rather not a good idea to have the curbside service in Area J picking up yard waste.
With Area J specifically, I don't think there's a need for it, and there hasn't been an ask for it. I mean, that's kind of beyond the scope of this notice of motion, but if it was requested, we could, and the board directed us, we could look into that service. But at this point, it's not on our radar to look at yard waste collection within Area J.
Director Rain.
Yes, I am in favor of the motion, provided areas and municipalities could opt in or opt out. In our case, we have no pickup. We have residents going to a transfer station, and we pay for the trucking from the transfer station, and it's one big collection. So I don't see how we can do it. By the way, we are doing it already, and we're doing mostly shipping on site. But I would hope that some peaks could opt out.
Thank you. And Director Stamer, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just wondering how this works out in as much as that some municipalities may not be in a position to be able to offer this service to their residents, but now we're talking about commercial pickup of recycling material, or not recycling, but disposable materials. And so how are we going to work that out? Because, for example, like even with the Lewis Creek Eco Depot, I can bring my yard waste, as you mentioned, free of charge, but if I get somebody to do the work for me, that gets charged. So I'd like to know from staff, where that breakdown could be, because if we are going to allow this for all our municipalities, for example, the District of Barrier, we could be identifying some of the larger areas that we may have to clean up. We could take advantage of that same opportunity, and instead of the district paying a tipping fee, we'd be able to do it for free. Correct? Okay. So I'd like to know what that breakdown would be in what we could actually be ending up, losing as a revenue stream. Not to say that I don't support the fire smarting, because I do absolutely 100%. But I also don't want to, if we're going to allow the municipalities to do it, and we're allowing people to clean up their yards, and let's say a municipality doesn't have the ability to do that, are we going to allow commercial operators to do the same thing, whether it's ABC Disposal that's gonna come around that same weekend and pick up seniors' waste. Are we gonna allow them that same flexibility because the municipality doesn't have that capacity? That's just a question I have.
The notice of motion is very specific that this is limited purely to local governments. It would not include commercial contractors, and it would be once in each calendar year. So this is not something that a municipality could offer every weekend in spring.
Understand, and what is the length of that? Once, is it a 1 day, 1 weekend? What is that? What was the intent on that?
It varies. I think in Cache Creek this year, it was a 1-day event on April 22nd. In Ashcroft, it was April 10th and 11th. So 2 days in Ashcroft. Director Houghton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For us EA directors that don't have any kind of pickup service or anything in our rural areas, I know all of us face a disposing of garbage over the bank. We just had an incident, and that's for right across from the transfer station where a guy dumped a mattress, a jug of oil, a propane tank and a bunch of other stuff, and Argo went and cleaned it up. Have we ever had 1 day a year, because I'm new at this, a free dump day to clean up your garbage in your yard so that, okay, we're not gonna have a tipping fee, and I don't know how that would affect our income, but to help alleviate somebody going up Goose Lake Road or Long Lake Road or Turtle Valley Road and dumping it over the bank?
Mr. Vieira?
I could speak to that, yes, and it's been discussed and debated a lot at this board. And the board is a decision that I believe about 8 years ago to end those free disposal days. Your example is actually very interesting, and I can't resist highlighting that every single product you listed that was illegally dumped is free to dispose of at an acceptable eco depot. So the point is that I strongly believe there is very, very little, if any, correlation between illegal dumping and the actual cost of disposal, because those items are all free and they're still illegally dumped. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Director O'Connor.
Thank you. Before the fire, the village of Lytton also did the 2 days a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, where we took yard waste. Just recently, we've had discussion at our council about offering this again, but we do not have the equipment to do it. So if anybody has a dump truck for sale, we're looking for one. Yeah, we wouldn't have the means to be able to do this.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Or I see Director Rain has his hand up. Director Rain.
Yeah, I'd like an answer to the question. Can we opt in or opt out, or is this, if we vote in favor, does this mean it applies everywhere?
No, Director Rain, thank you for that. The intent of the notice of motion was to give other municipalities and electoral areas with curbside pickup something to think of if they wanted to look at this as a possible option. I know that I was not aware, Director O'Connor, thank you, that Lytton offered this. I knew that Cache Creek and Ashcroft did and have for quite some years. It was simply, there is no question of opting in or out. It's simply if you choose as a municipality or an electoral area with curbside pickup to opt into this, just asking that the fees for disposing of these items, which are free for residents to drop off, be waived for participating municipalities, local governments.
I'm still confused. Can a municipality opt out and say, no, we're doing it on our own?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Mr. Lois, are you going to make me read this entire notice of motion out? You are, aren't you?
Chair, as a truly benevolent corporate officer, I will not make you read the entire thing again, as it has been printed in the agenda pack, and therefore I believe that everyone has had a chance to read it, and you did have the enjoyable experience of reading the entire thing at the last meeting.
Thank you. So I will go straight to the therefore be it resolved. Therefore be it resolved that the Thompson-Nicola Regional District work with each municipal regional district waste collection agency that would like to offer its residents a yard waste cleanup to waive the disposal fees for such an event once in each calendar year, and work with the agencies to ensure that all affected eco depots and transfer stations know when these events are taking place so that they can be staffed appropriately and that the material can be accepted, stored, disposed of properly. So I'm looking for someone to move that notice of motion, Director Bass, seconded by Director Hayward. Is there any further discussion? Oh, Director Lepso.
So when we're saying once, is that 1 or 2 days, or what was your plan with that?
It really, in my opinion, it depends on the size of the municipality. Cache Creek is just under 1,000 residents. Ashcroft is about 1,700. So theirs is 1 day, ours is 2. Sometimes it can go to 3. It depends, it entirely depends on what the weather's been like and how busy people have been in their yards. And of course, the idea is that diminishing returns, the more people who do it and get rid of those cedar hedges and old dead trees and stuff growing up against the house they don't want. Once it's gone, they're not disposing of it anymore. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's an aye from Director Rain. All those opposed, please put your hands up. Director Sao, are you opposed? Okay,
Correct.
you're opposed. Thank you very much for saying that. And anyone else? Thank you. The motion passes. We move on. Yes, Director Stamer.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to make a point, if I can, on that, maybe to staff, is that hearing from the electoral directors, they're not going to have the same possible capacity as municipalities will on these days that we're going to be having in question. But that doesn't mean that we can't encourage our residents in those areas to be able to participate that same weekend. So maybe possibly we can make sure that there's more than enough room. In other words, you know, there could be neighbors that could help neighbors and that sort of thing in this same process. So basically allowing, if we're going to go through with this, that we have more than enough room for that capacity, because if the municipalities are going to be bringing in more capacity, electoral directors could be, or areas could be doing it the same weekend. And we can just, you know, do the same thing, say, okay, it's not commercially, but you know, if Director Houghton has a pickup and he's going to be able to come over to my house, there's no difference on whether he brings it to the Eco Depot or I do. So it's something that we could help our area directors with in that free weekend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, through the chair, the point's noted. Operationally, we make sure our yard waste bays are open and clear before the spring rush anyway, because that's when most of it comes in.
Well, and if I may, the reason I'm making the point is that Lewis Creek got pretty full pretty fast this spring, particularly in the yard waste. That's why I'm making the point.
Thank you. Question period. Are there, oh, the gallery's almost empty. Hi, Ms. Jeremiah. Not. There were faces there. They've all gone. Question period. Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies for bringing this up now. I just got messages from Manager Lewis over there. I had asked some questions before the meeting started around the letter that we got regarding Sun Peaks and taking it out of the tax area. And he didn't really have an answer, but he provided an answer during this last little bit. And I just want to share a little bit with the board, because it didn't make sense to me when it said in here, Sun Peaks is located at CSD, that it is included in the 2021 Kamloops CMA, since more than 50% of the CSD's labor force determined from census 2016 commute to the delineation core of Kamloops. That to me didn't make sense, and that Big White isn't, and I didn't understand. And Greg had been texting me, your manager Lois had been texting me during the last little bit and saying that because Sun Peaks isn't incorporated, because Big White is not incorporated, they become part of the whole of the Kootenai boundary area E, which of course doesn't have the same links to move to Metro Kelowna. Nonetheless, I just thought it was very important to me, and manager Lois is going to put that in email to the board to understand the difference and why Big White is in there and not, because I still didn't understand based on the letter that we got back from the minister. And I see Mayor Rain put his hand up, but I just thought I would share. I was going to bring it up before, but I didn't have the answer in time. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Rain. Do you have something else on this point?
Yeah, ironically, 2016, we showed 220 people commuting to work. 165 commute within the subdivision of their residence. In other words, Sun Peaks. That's about, I believe, 70-odd%. Yet because Sun Peaks is surrounded by Area P, we're deemed to not be a municipality. We're deemed to be part of Area P. And thus, Area P is adjacent to the city of Kamloops. Therefore, the people are commuting to Kamloops. But under duration, 185 people say that they commute less than 15 minutes. So it's a bunch of hocus bureaucratic talk. But the issue is they deem Sun Peaks to not exist as a municipality, only to exist as part of Area P. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Thank you, Director Rain. Very frustrating. Anyone else have any questions? Pardon me? Director Getz.
Yes, this is a long weekend, and in Merritt, we have 2 days of drag racing up at the airport. So my question to you is, why would you not be there for that? So thank you.
I'm waiting for the Cache Creek drag races to come up. Stay closer to home. Reduce my carbon footprint as well. Although it's hard to talk about reducing carbon footprints if you're going to watch drag races. I understand that completely. Anyone else have any good, Mr. Vieira?
And I apologize if you allow me, one other comment we wanted to make and related to these notice of motions. Bit of a learning experience for us as staff going through these that we just wanted to highlight to the board. And this last one's an example of a lot of debate around this topic, with this information only being presented now for you to consider. So any board members considering a notice of motion, I think checking in with staff around whether the more appropriate notice of motion would be recommending that staff bring a report back, and then a fulsome report could come on the decision. Sometimes notice of motions are pretty straightforward, and some of them, I'm sure the board would appreciate staff research before making a decision. This one was fairly straightforward. It wasn't an issue, but just wanted to highlight that. So if you're considering a notice of motion, requesting you check in with staff whether it'd be most appropriate to be a recommendation for staff to do a report or a notice of motion going straight to the board.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, we move on to item 16, and I will move that a closed meeting take place following this board meeting in accordance with Community Charter Sections 91C, Labor Relations or Other Employee Relations, and E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council or the board considers the disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district.
I'll second that.
Second, Director Stamer, all those in favor? Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute.
Could someone send us the link?
We'll be sending the new link to you directly.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.